All right, I wanted to take a moment and go over some personal minimums. That is what this week's presentation is about. So, looking at this picture here, you can see this guy got into a little bit of a problem, and a lot of times we get trapped by our own decisions that we make as pilots. There's a In Too Deep Air Safety Institute crash that AOPA put together, similar to the case study one that we watched. We're going to go over this another time, so I'm not going to go into this accident. But talking about personal minimums, we have to understand a difference between what is legal versus what is safe. So the legal aspect normally revolves around FAA regulations, and then if you violate those regulations, you could have certain penalties, fines, or decertification, or your pilot's license taken away for a period of time. We also have organizational. So what does the organization require? How do we manage organizational risk? And then also violations there as well that can result in termination or expulsion. For example, termination from the Polk State Aerospace Flight Program Safety, which is really risk-based, and each pilot's going to have a different level of minimums based on their experience and their own acceptance of risk. How do you categorize minimums? Well, here's a few: VFR, marginal VFR, IFR, and low IFR. And from the FAA guidelines. But this is an example of having minimums. So this is the minimum, but some, depending on your proficiency level, your minimum might be a little bit higher. This is what the rules say, but for example, as a VFR pilot, you might need 10 miles of visibility initially, because the rules state a certain thing. You actually might, as a personal decision, need to be have a bigger safety margin than what the rules state as the minimums. Same things as winds, specifically crosswind components and gusts. It takes a little practice to get used to landing in a crosswind, taking off in a crosswind. So you're going to have to build up to being able to handle that crosswind component that's up to the limit of the airplane, depending on what type model series aircraft you're flying. Same way with weather. Icing's bad all around, but runway conditions, what's the thunderstorm activity around, what type of precipitation is occurring. So all of these are additional minimums that we have to take pilots. Performance, highest density altitude, runway length. Lakeland Airport's runway is a lot longer than, say, over at Plant City. So we have to keep that in mind. Day versus night operations. And then flying around mountainous terrain compared to flying here that's almost at sea level in the state of Florida. So as it says here, the last minute is not the time to determine your minimums. You need to determine your minimums before you get into the airplane. So you're not finding out what your minimums are during a flight. So how do we set personal minimums? We need to look at whether our comfort level and adjust for specific conditions, and then stick to that plan that we have for our personal minimums. If you're flying with an instructor, you should do it together. You'll see this in another link for this week, but this is a FAA Personal Weather Risk Assessment Guide that you can take a look at, and then you can actually score it based on your level of experience and how comfortable you are with the pilot, aircraft, and then the environment around you. So I'm sure we all have personal minimums. So students, thank you for your time. Have a great week.